Hello everyone, my name is Mansamusa and welcome back to my channel. Today we're back with another replay analysis video in Advance Wars by Web. And today I'm very excited to introduce a new character into the Advance Wars by Web cinematic universe, if you will, and that is my main man, Bongus here. I know I've covered very interesting matches before against some of the most notable people on the site, including characters like StarFlash, Tesla246, and Grim Guy. You know, very high-level players always give very interesting matches, but I wanted to introduce my man Bongus here. Bongus is one of the most interesting profiles I've ever seen on the site. I actually found this guy a few days ago, so it's very new for me, but if we check out his profile here, and you'll notice I'm going to be hiding some stuff, I'll get into that in a little bit, but you can see he has 1,300 wins in Global League. That is an absolutely insane amount. If we pull up StarFlash here for context, you can see that StarFlash has 1,100 wins, or just about 1,100 wins in Global League. And that is StarFlash, right? Number one, he's one of the best players on the site. He's going to be winning a bunch of games. And number two, he always has like at least 10 Global League games going, which is, to me, an insane amount. I can only handle like 3 at a time without getting overwhelmed. So to have 1,100 wins, number one, is crazy. But for Bongus to have 1,300 is absolutely insane, especially for a player who most people probably haven't heard of before. But if we pull StarFlash down, you can see that I'm hiding some information about Bongus. I'm hiding his losses and his draws and his overall ELO. And the reason for that is this video is going to be a bit of a guess the ELO video, if you will. So throughout this match, I want you guys to see what you think of Bongus' play. Do you think he's more of a new player with 1,300 wins? Do you think he's more a mid to intermediate level player, maybe around 1,100 ELO, something like that? Or do you think he's one of the Grand Masters of the site, maybe one you haven't heard of before, who is a sneaky 1,400, 1,500 ELO player? So get in the comments throughout the video, let me know what you think of Bongus' play, and what do you think his ELO is. Before we get into this cryptic match, though, let's quickly discuss this CO matchup. So in this matchup, we have a Kindle versus Sami game. And this is something that you really don't see that too often in the history of replays, because these two COs used to actually be in a different tier. Kindle used to be a tier 3 CO. She was kind of the queen of tier 3. She was definitely the best CO in that tier on most maps. But with recent changes to Advance Wars by Web, stuff that happened in the past few months or so, Kindle was actually increased in tier to tier 2. So now these two COs are on the same tier. So you see them much more often in matches, and especially on mixed space maps. So this map is called Don't Drink the Water. It's a very famous mixed space map, and generally in mixed space maps, day-to-day COs that have very strong powers, such as Sami and Kindle. Kindle gets the plus 30% attack on cities, and Sami gets the much stronger infantry and better caps. They always tend to be favored on maps like this because fighting tends to happen a lot sooner, and it's more about your day-to-day abilities, and the game's normally won in about 7 to 8 days. So longer matches with longer matches that favor more powerful COs with their super CO powers, COs like Olaf, Drake, Hawk, they're generally not seen as much on mixed space maps. It's more about day-to-day. You see more COs like Von Bolt, Kindle, Sami. With all that being said, let's get right into this match, CalRadio versus Bongus on Don't Drink the Water. We roll into day 1 here for CalRadio, and he's just going to get his early captures of the bases and get out some early infantry. There's not really much to talk about in the early stages of maps like this, except for this interesting movement that you can do with the infantry. So this infantry is going out to actually capture this city, which in the long run CalRadio will probably take back. But it's very common to do this for most players on this map. You get some early income out of this city, and you can try to defend it. It's especially a viable strat for someone like Sami, who has stronger infantry that can interrupt more effectively. But for most COs that are a bit less infantry focused, I would not recommend going for this city, and instead going for this city instead. It's much safer. You're going to keep this income. But Bongus' infantry is going to go capture this city over here. So we continue on with some of the early movement. We can see the capture there. Not much is going to happen. We see our first interesting move, I believe, here by CalRadio on day 3. Cal actually chooses to interrupt the own capture on the city to capture the comm tower. And this is, I would say, just a bad play. You want this early income, number 1, to get some units out there on the field, and number 2, comm towers are not necessarily very important at this stage of the match, right? We're not gonna, even in mixed space, you're not gonna have fights this early on. You're still probably 2 or 3 days away from getting real engagements, so you can delay this comm tower and finish off this capture. It's definitely what I would have done here. But different strokes for different folks. If Cal is very concerned, especially about some of these early infantry engagements, he thinks the comm tower is necessary, so he skips the city and goes for it. He sends his other infantry to recapture that city, and we move on to Bongus' turn here. More just early income builds here, going out to capture this airport, very important to get unit count later on in the match. We see a mech build here by CalRadio, which is another interesting play. I think as Kindle, you want to get more tanks out. Mechs are not the best unit, especially against Sami. Number one, mechs overall are pretty weak unless you are Sami and have powers that can help them out. But especially against Sami, you don't really want to be building mechs because her own infantry, Sami's infantry, can pretty much wreck your mechs, and it's a much better value engagement for her than you. So I would be focusing more on tanks, anti-air, battlecopters, kind of the bread and butter units. And definitely would not be suggesting mechs for someone who's facing Sami. I guess his idea here is probably to bring this mech over into this mountain and have some long-term pressure against this city, maybe defend some of these captures, but I don't know, I probably would have just saved up for a tank here. We also see a mech build over here. I guess similar reasons. There are mountains that are good for the mechs, but I would have just probably gone for a tank and an infantry instead of 2 mechs here. We move out to Bongus' turn. He also starts the capture of the comm tower, goes out for the airport. All good moves here. And we see him actually go for this lab. I didn't talk about this in the intro of this game, but this map actually has no HQs. So Sami's Victory March HQ strategy is not going to be as viable. But it does have 2 labs, and the labs essentially act as HQs on this map. And how that works is that as long as you have 1 lab under control, you're safe from HQ capture, right? The labs act as HQs where you only need to have 1 to be in the game. So even though Bongus is capturing this lab, as long as this lab still stands, CalRadio will not lose the match, and the same for Bongus on these 2 labs here. But it is good to go for this capture, right? Because then you threaten it, you go down to essentially making this lab the last HQ on the site. So I do like this move by Bongus, especially as Sami, you want to be threatening this type of play, maybe mid to later in the game. So I don't mind it, even though this infantry is going to get hit pretty hard by this infantry, and probably some more pressure coming on from some of these infantry as well. But we see Bongus move out some more infantry as well. CalRadio goes for this capture, does go for the potential interrupt here, but because this is a Sami infantry, and this is another good move by Bongus here, Bongus is going to get this lab, right? That's one of the most powerful things about Sami, right, is you can't actually interrupt her infantry very easily. So he is going to get this lab, meaning that this one is the focal point of the map right now. So CalRadio needs to make sure he defends this, or else this is going to be a very short game where Bongus essentially HQ rushes, sends this infantry over, captures the lab, and the game's going to end very quickly. But he moves his other infantry out, moves his mech to the south, moves this mech to protect the lab. Good play there, realizing the importance of it. Builds another mech, starting a mech chain. Again, I don't think mechs are the best unit against Sami, but we'll see how it works out for him. He builds a recon, which actually I do like against Sami. There's going to be a bunch of infantry at play, so getting a recon out is, I think, a good move, especially as Kindle, where you have extra firepower on cities, and Sami's tanks are going to be weaker, right? So she doesn't want to build them in general, so I think recons are a pretty strong play here by CalRadio. Bongus gets the comm tower cap, gets some more infantry captures, gets the capture of the lab, meaning that, again, this is the only one left for CalRadio. Gets the interrupt here on this city, moves this infantry out, is now threatening the game-ending capture on this lab, but CalRadio has plenty of troops in the area to interrupt if he's playing smart. Builds 2 tanks. I'm never going to say no to tank builds. Again, they're not as strong as Sami, as other COs, and you're kind of building them directly into the mech spam that CalRadio is doing, so maybe not the best idea. I maybe would have preferred like recon anti here. Like that probably honestly would have been better here, especially with no tanks built by CalRadio. But I'm never going to say no to tanks. Tanks are still good units, fundamental of your army composition, no matter what. CalRadio moves out his mech and infantry into the area to protect the HQ. Again, though, this mech is weak against these infantry. This is why I didn't like that build in the first place, but we'll see how it goes for him. You get some more infantry captures. CalRadio sends out this infantry to capture the city and also potentially threaten the HQ itself to keep himself in the game in a different way, right? By capturing this one, even if this one falls, he'll still be fine. So I like that play. Doesn't go for the capture because he's not going to get it. Instead chooses to just weaken the infantry more. I think that's a fine play. Builds another mech and another mech. So going full mech spam here. I think he's cosplaying as Sami in this game. Maybe forgot who he selected. But we'll see how the strategy works out for him. And there's another mech down here. I gotta imagine at this point it's a troll to go against Sami and make this many mechs, but we'll see how it works out for him. But we go here to Bongus' turn. So Bongus does go for the capture of the lab. This is game ending if CalRadio does not interrupt it. Goes for this capture as well of the HQ, and that's actually a very dangerous capture. This infantry will probably not be able to interrupt it. Definitely will not be able to interrupt it. So it's a good play by Bongus. He's going to get this comm tower flip. Interrupts the capture further here on this city, interrupts this capture of the southern city. I like all of that, and interrupts this capture here as well. So all good interrupts here by Bongus. Gets a good engagement, 9-3 here on the city. Really just going for a bunch of infantry engagements, and that's what's CalRadio has allowed, right? By building so many mechs and so many infantry, you're just allowing Sami to have good engagements here with her day-to-day powers. So we do see an anti-air built. I think this is strong, right? There is still no tanks on the board, so this anti-air just has free reign to come in and kill all these infantry. And we move to CalRadio's turn. So we roll in here for day 7 for Cal. He brings his recon out, gets some infantry engagements here. Moves his mech into the mountain, kills off this infantry. I think the mech and infantry are going to try to potentially kill off this infantry after the capture and try to take the comm tower back. I think that's a fine play. We see a few more infantry engagements over here on the right side of the map, and the full interruption of the capture on the lab. And I think this was actually a mistake by Bongus. Kind of a Mangus infantry in that way, right? You're totally losing your infantry for 1 damage on the mech. It's absolutely not worth it. But I guess he was just trying to win the game quick and see if CalRadio messed up. But against a good player, that's never going to work, right? And CalRadio proves it by getting essentially a free engagement kill on that infantry. CalRadio going a bit more for the fundamentals here, building a tank. I think that's a good play. Moves his infantry out, hopefully to capture this lab, because again, this is still under threat. And builds another tank here on the left side. Bongus goes for the kill of the infantry on the city there. Gets another kill on this city, goes for this capture. This is going to be decently hard to interrupt, especially with still protecting the lab, but still doable. Gets a nice, multiple nice engagements here, basically killing off this mech in the next few turns, and actually killing off this mech here on this tile. Again, this is why mechs are not as strong going up against Sami. Gets the comm tower flip now after all of these engagements. Yeah, again, that's a common piece of wisdom I always say. Capture your comm towers before you start your engagements. This probably would have been a 7-4 engagement if you had captured the comm tower first. So definitely a mistake there, but good to do it at some point, right? Better late than never. Gets a nice engagement here, 10-2 tank against the infantry on the plain. Rolls out his other tanks, brings in the anti-air. This anti-air is now a bit under threat from this tank, so you probably want to bring these tanks over to protect it in order to clear out this area if you want to go for this capture. And we see a battlecopter tank infantry build by Bongus, and we roll into CalRadio's turn. As we roll into CalRadio's turn, let's do just a quick board state check here. So we have 21 units for CalRadio, around 40k unit value and 16k income. And for Bongus, it's 25 units, 55k, and 17 income. So that's honestly a pretty even match. Just by stats going into CalRadio's turn, that's about what you would expect. A little low on unit count for CalRadio, so you could say that Bongus is slightly winning. But if we also take a look at board state here, Bongus has 2 comm towers to CalRadio's 0. That is definitely in favor of Bongus, and he's also threatening some powerful captures here, and also having 3 out of the 4 labs. So this match is definitely, I would say, leaning closer to Bongus at this time, but CalRadio is definitely not out of it, especially if he starts building some more tanks and maybe some less mechs on the board. So the recon comes in, gets a nice engagement, 10-3 on that infantry there. Kills off the infantry on the mountain, and now the mountain's free. It goes off and kills this infantry as well. Nice engagements. Gets the comm tower cap. This is a very nice play by CalRadio. Bongus is not going to be able to interrupt this at all with either of these 2 infantry Definitely probably should have put this infantry over here instead of out here to guard this comm tower. But this is a nice flip by CalRadio. He's going to get that comm tower. Gets a nice hit here, 7-5 against the infantry on the comm tower. Again, though, this is a mech, so you're kind of losing a unit value trade there. Brings out the tank to the city to address the 2 tanks here by Bongus. Builds another mech. I guess this one makes a bit more sense to defend against these tanks, but if Bongus is smart, he's just going to move these tanks off to the right, which is probably what he wanted to do anyway to pressure this lab. So probably not the best mech play. Gets some more nice engagements here by CalRadio. Tries to interrupt the city, but again, it's Sami, so Sami's still going to get the capture. Kind of suicides his mech in order to get some more damage on the infantry. Actually, don't hate that. This mech was probably dead anyway. And builds another infantry. We roll into Bongus' turn here. He brings his infantry on top of the mountain to look at the comm tower. Again, probably trying to flip it back. Goes for the capture here on this city. As a Sami infantry, this is going to take 3 turns to get this city cap, as opposed to the normal 4 it would take for anyone else. Gets the capture here on this city, and like I said, smart play is moving his tanks out over here to both attack this tank here on the missile silo and start to pressure the last remaining lab. Gets a few more captures here for Bongus, and we see the income is now 19-16, leaning even more towards Bongus. Gets a nice 10, a full kill on the recon here. I believe that is a luck roll. The recon should live on 1 HP around 50% of the time, but gets the nice full kill there. And a few more infantry engagements. And we see more battlecopters and tanks coming out. I like this pressure, getting an even bigger unit count advantage and trying to pressure this center base here by Bongus. I think this is all very smart plays. Moving into day 9 for CalRadio, he has his Urban Blight ready, so he goes ahead and pops it. Gets a ton of damage with it. One of the most underrated aspects of Urban Blight, in my opinion, is how much this is actually going to cost Bongus in terms of repairs. He's going to, instead of getting 20k income, end up with about 14 or 15k after all these repairs. It also interrupts the city cap even further, making it take, I believe, now 3, maybe even 4 turns. I'm always bad with my Sami calcs, but it definitely delays the city for a long time, giving him time to come in and interrupt it fully. Get some more nice infantry engagements. Does a good thing here, starts capturing this lab. Again, this is very important to always have 2, especially when you're going up against Sami. Gets the kills off here on the infantry and with the tank. Brings his battlecopter in the area. Is going to be a pretty easy cap of this comm tower back now by CalRadio. And moves his infantry out. Builds a anti-air to start addressing some of these battlecopters coming in, and a tank. I like these builds, but I don't like the bases that they're being built in. I think this base is definitely in the target. I think, honestly, a medium tank build here may have been the play to start warding off some of this aggression, and then, yeah, probably a medium tank here, and then an anti-air on the turn after maybe been the play. But overall, it's kind of a tough situation. I also think that this battlecopter probably needs to go over to this area as well to defend against the onslaught that's about to come in. You see some more nice engagements, knocking off a few infantry and killing off the weak tank, and we roll into Bongus' turn on day 9. Day 9 for Bongus, and he goes off and interrupts the lab capture. We can definitely see that this is a move designed, I think, to always be threatening this HQ capture, especially with Victory March coming up relatively soon in the next few turns. And again, that this anti-air is not in range yet also makes this a good play. Goes for some attacks here on the infantry on the comm tower. I don't super like this. You're kind of throwing away 2 infantry, and this infantry isn't even killed yet. So kind of a reckless move in my opinion, especially with the overall unit count advantage for CalRadio in the area. Even more so because I think this battlecopter can actually be trapped if CalRadio plays his cards right, moving an infantry on every side of this battlecopter and then bringing the anti-air in. Actually, maybe this infantry engagements are slightly better than I give them credit for, because I believe it stops this infantry from fully being able to enclose this battlecopter. But CalRadio goes in, gets some more nice engagements on the infantry. Like this play, getting a nice engagement here on the tank and also blocking off one of the tiles of exit for this base. I'm just realizing actually CalRadio base skipped on the previous turn on this base here, which I think is a horribly bad move, especially because his base is under threat. You definitely needed to build at least an infantry here. Unit count's super important when you have a weak base like this, so definitely a mistake there by CalRadio. Gets the kill off on the tank, finishing off with the anti-air. And we see more of an infantry swarm over towards this lab, and this is why it was so important to build an infantry or just anything on the space, right? Look at the effective unit count in this area. CalRadio has 1, 2, 3, 4 units in this area, and Bongus has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, 7 units in this area. That is a massive advantage for Bongus, especially when this lab is such a key piece of the puzzle towards the end of this game. So we see some more good builds here by Bongus, making sure he builds a unit at all of his bases. Very important. CalRadio starts by just building a tank. Good now, better late than never, but definitely needed to build something there on the previous turn. Gets this nice capture off, which is good. Starts trying to take the city back. I don't think this is a good play. It's going to take 4 turns for you as Kindle, and this battlecopter wants to come in anyway to attack this infantry, and you don't have an anti-air in the area, so it's just kind of throwing away an infantry going for this cap. Does get some more good interrupts here. Nice engagements on the infantry. Brings out the battlecopter to threaten this, brings out the anti-air to threaten this battlecopter, but again, this battlecopter and this battlecopter are just going to run away over to this part of the map. Get some more good infantry movements out here towards the south. Actually like this mech in its positioning. It's not going to be in range of any of these infantry. It is in range of this tank, but oh, actually this tank is not covering, so yeah, never mind. I don't like the positioning of this mech. This mech is essentially free lunch for this tank over here in the south. We get a kill off though. This is good of all the infantry in the area with the tank and the battlecopter, allowing CalRadio to get to the comm tower back. We've seen a lot of comm tower flips in this match. Get an okay engagement there, although I wouldn't have gone for it. I think this infantry needed to go over here to the right, rather than being just picked off by all these incoming tank and infantry. Anti-air comes in, gets a nice engagement here on the mech, and like I said, that infantry is going to die. Infantry, wow, that is a Sami play if you've ever seen it. Infantry goes 10-8 with a kill on the infantry on this road. Get another nice engagement here like I was talking about on the mech, and this tank does not cover. Brings in the battlecopter, kills off the infantry, trying to capture the city. It's another thing that we talked about on the previous turn. Gets a, I believe that was just a normal capture, not a flip, unless I'm wrong, in which case it was a flip. But we see that the income is still 21 to 17, so income not a huge worry here. And again, you know, unit count roughly the same, unit value roughly the same. None of the indications are that this is a one-sided map, outside of the fact that this lab is looking very likely to fall. Bongus goes ahead and gets the comm tower flipped, tries to go for this capture of the lab, realizing the danger that he's in. Tries to wall off his capturing infantry as much as possible. Brings out his tanks, builds another mech here for some reason. This guy loves his mechs. Brings in a battlecopter in to start to threaten this area more. Brings in the tank, gets a nice engagement, 8-4 on the city. Brings out his other tank into the area, builds an anti-air here, which is good to start to potentially address these battlecopters. And we roll into Bongus' turn here. We can see he's very close to getting Victory March. He could potentially get it on this turn if he plays his cards right. But instead just goes for another good idea here, which is just interrupting this capture further. And I believe he's going to start his own capture of the lab here as well. Also goes for the capture of the comm tower. These comm towers have been fought over the entire match. I think at one point Bongus had both of them. Now CalRadio has both of them. But if this game goes on much further, Bongus will in fact capture this comm tower back and will be back at 1 apiece. Bongus goes for the capture of the lab. If this is not fully interrupted, CalRadio will lose the game. Get in general some more nice engagements. And if we take a snapshot here of the turn as we go to CalRadio's day 12, we can see that it's pretty much impossible for him to really do anything. The game is pretty much over at this point. You need to find a way to not only kill off this infantry, but because Bongus has Victory March, you need to find a way to kill off this infantry as well. So the game's over at this point because these caps are not going to go through. They're one more day away from going through, so yeah, if CalRadio just had one more turn, he probably would be still in this game, at least at some point. But because he doesn't, the game's over. Even with the Urban Blight, it's not going to matter. This capture is still going to go through. Anyway, because of Victory March, even if it wasn't at 1 HP, it would still go through. But we get some consolation engagements, if you will, some good attacks there. But CalRadio does, in fact, resign the game. So win number 1300 and something for Bongus here in this match. Great game for him. Very interesting matchup, Sami versus Kindle. It's my first time casting a game with that matchup. I think it's a great one in Tier 2, and I look forward to seeing more of them in the future. I think they're a very interesting combination on maps like this in mixed space to see the power of one attacking on cities versus all the infantry engagements. I think if CalRadio had built more tanks, more anti-air, more battle just kind of the bread and butter units, and definitely less mechs, I think he would have had a much better shot in this game. But with all that being said, let's go into the part of this video that I think most people are interested in, which is the ELO reveal. So if we pull up Bongus's profile again, we'll slowly start to remove these boxes, and you can see that Bongus is in fact around an 800 rated ELO player. He actually has more losses than wins. I think it's something like 2,700 total matches here. So that is an insane amount of dedication to this game. I think StarFlash barely has him etched in terms of total games played if we pull up the two profiles. But yeah, just a crazy guy on the site that I've never heard of before. I don't think many people have heard of this guy before. But definitely someone who's dedicated and trying his best in all these games, and giving us a very exciting match, at least in this replay, being able to pull off the full HQ cap even without Victory in March as Sami in this matchup. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. My name is Mansa Musa, and remember, don't build mechs against Sami. Bye, guys.